We do have some numbers on the percentage of, on just honestly what Americans do think of Muslims and what they've said themselves. And we found that when we asked a question, if you were to be really honest, how much prejudice, if any, do you have against the following groups? And we had a series of religious groups. We just looked at religious groups in this study. And we found that more than 60% of Americans admit to having at least some prejudice against Muslims. 19% said they had a great deal of prejudice, which is really an alarming number, 1 out of 5. So this is a problem, and it's a very real problem. Muslims were the most negatively regarded religious group in our study, and we looked at almost all religious groups, with the only 2 that were worse off, in fact, are Scientologists and atheists, which I'm not sure if we would even consider either of them a religious group. So we cannot pretend that all is well. Now, what is at the heart? We actually did a driver analysis. What predicts or what drives extreme prejudice? We looked at that 20% or 19% that said they had a great deal of prejudice. The strongest predictor of extreme prejudice against Muslims was an unfavorable opinion of Islam as a faith. That might seem like an obvious result, but it actually has huge implications, because what we have to realize is there is this very concrete connection between demonizing a faith, which we're actually pretty comfortable doing, as long as someone is just bashing the faith, that doesn't feel like it's a type of prejudice. But that demonizing of the faith of Islam is directly influencing people's regard for people, other people who they are then deciding on employment for, who they are treating at the airport, at the grocery store. It's affecting real people's lives. So demonizing a concept, a faith, is connected to how people view other human beings. Now, the good news is the people who said they had no prejudice, about 34%, the strongest driver there was also a positive or a favorable view of Islam. So that was the key difference, is what you thought about Islam. Now, what came after that was knowing a Muslim. That also was a positive driver. The things that, when we look at what makes people have an unfavorable view of Islam, it was the view that none of these surprise us. Violent, intolerant, and subjugates women. What I think is so interesting is when we do, I direct the Center for Muslim Studies, and we have the largest, most comprehensive study of Muslim opinion ever done. We cover 90% of the global Muslim population. And what we find when we actually ask a representative sample is many of the things that drive unfavorable opinions are actually directly false. They're simply not true when you actually ask people from a wide, to actually get a representative sample. One very easy to look at example is the 74% of Americans say they disagree with the notion that the majority of Muslims believe men and women should have equal rights. When we actually ask a representative sample of Muslims around the world, a strong majority in even the most conservative cultures say that, in fact, men and women should have equal legal rights. Now, do they? Maybe the answer is no. But the normative standard among people, among a representative sample, say they should. So I think some of the problem is that we are really allowing a vocal fringe to monopolize the conversation on what Muslims really stand for.